Zhou Yan rubbed his eyes and traveled from 2023 to 1990, becoming a junior student at the Central Conservatory of Music. By chance, he joined the music group for the movie, The Big Red Lantern Hangs High. Originally, Zhou Yan only wanted to take a part-time job to earn 150 yuan of extra income per month, but the development of things was somewhat different from what he had in mind. "You play the flute very well, come and play Chen Feipu. Your song is good, let's add it to the movie. Your script is quite interesting, let's make it into a short film." Keywords of the novel. 1990, Starting from Baojia Street without pop-ups, 1990. Starting from Baojia Street. Download the complete TXT collection, 1990. Starting from Baojia Street. Read the latest chapters. Chapter 1. Number 43 Baojia Street. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 1 Number 43 Baojia Street in late June 1990. In the early summer afternoon, a gust of wind blew from a distance. As soon as it arrived at 43 Baojia Street, the wind became lazy. It lazily walked through the alleys, crossed the words Central Conservatory of Music on the door, and finally blew into the yard, stirring up the already restless poplar leaves. Under the shade of a tree, Zhou Yan lay on his back on a bare stone, listening to the restless afternoon central notes. Several young and beautiful female students were practicing their voices in the left corridor, occasionally humming some popular songs like Sweet Honey. Bach and Beethoven occasionally floated out of the distant piano room, appearing and disappearing in the air before Zhou Yan could catch them. Unable to catch Bach and Beethoven, Zhou Yan could only honestly go and catch those female classmates' Sweet Honey. Just as he was immersed in this kind of decadent sound, a loud shout rang in his ear, "Zhou Yan, Zhou Yan." Zhou Yan turned his body and squinted his eyes in the direction of the sound. A man in a white shirt, aged 27 or 8, walked towards him quickly. The man's two shouts seemed to have a special power, not only dispelling Bach and Beethoven, but also stirring away Sweet Honey and the lazy wind hovering on the branches. "Guoping brother." Zhou Yan helplessly flipped over and sat up, responding with a voice. The man's name is Jia Guoping, and he is Zhou Yan's roommate. They are both students of the composition department of the Central Conservatory of Music, class 87, but there is a difference of 7 years between the two. Jia Guoping had previously worked at the company and studied at Jinsi Drama School for a few years. Later, he was admitted to the Central Conservatory of Music, so he was older and most of his classmates would call him brother. Zhou Yan's call to Guoping Gu was a bit awkward, because half a month ago he was a Chinese teacher from a key high school who lived in 2023, almost without confusion, and had a peaceful life. That night, he was grading his students' compositions. He just took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes before arriving at the Central Conservatory of Music in 1990, becoming Zhou Yan, a third-year student in the composition department. Zhou Yan from this world took a leave of absence from school because he fell seriously ill in April and missed many classes. Who knew that just after the suspension procedures were completed, Zhou Yan's illness had recovered again? The teacher and classmates all said that Zhou Yan's illness came inexplicably and he went inexplicably. Jia Guoping walked over and grabbed Zhou Yan's arm, saying, "Come with me quickly. Director Shi is looking for you. If the dormitory didn't see you, I knew you must be here." Looking at Zhou Yan's stunned appearance, Jia Guoping also sighed inwardly. Since half a month ago, Zhou Yan has become very strange. He runs south whenever he has something to do, either sleeping under the shade of a tree or staring blankly at a pile of stones. Many people believe that Zhou Yan's illness has affected his brain and has sequelae, but he still hasn't recovered. Zhou Yan didn't move his butt and looked up to ask, "What are you looking for me for?" "Of course there's something going on." Jia Guoping's arms were thick and strong, and Kong Wu was powerful. Without hesitation, he lifted Zhou Yan sitting on the stone and said, "I'll know exactly what happened once I go." Forced by Jia Guowei, Zhou Yan didn't resist much and walked with him honestly. When he first crossed over to Yangyin and saw Jia Guoping, Zhou Yan was startled. As a high school Chinese teacher, he doesn't have much knowledge about the music industry, but he happens to know Jia Guoping because one of his few experiences attending concerts was listening to Jia Guoping's creation, The Ripples of Time and Space. Zhou Yan didn't understand much of that concert, but he was greatly shocked and had a rough understanding of Jia Guoping's situation. Jia Guoping had many names, one of which was a teacher from the composition department of China Central Conservatory of Music. Unexpectedly, after traveling through time, I became classmates with him. Director Shi, as mentioned by Jia Guoping, is the director of their Central Conservatory of Music Composition Department, Shi Wanchun. Director Shi enjoys a great reputation in the music industry, especially in the field of film music. He was the one who wrote the music for the movie, The Founding Ceremony, that was just released last year. Jia Guoping grabbed Zhou Yan's arm and led him to the door of Shi Wanchun's office. He raised his hand and knocked on the door. Director Shi, I have brought you someone. After speaking, Jia Guoping opened the door and pushed Zhou Yan in directly. This set of combos is more like escorting prisoners. Zhou Yan stumbled and almost fell to eat shit. When he stood firm and turned his head to say a few words, Jia Guoping had already closed the door and ran away. Shi Wanchun is over 50 years old, with half of his long hair turning white. He has a rather serious face, and even when he smiles, he doesn't show any affinity, but instead appears even more serious. Seeing Zhou Yan, Shi Wanchun put down the book in his hand and said, "Here we go." Zhou Yan complained to Jia Guoping in his heart, and as soon as he looked up, he changed his smile and said, "Director, do you have anything to do with me? Can't I come to you if it's okay?" Shi Wanchun glanced at Zhou Yan, casually took a cigarette from the cigarette box and delivered it to his mouth, then took out a match, but unfortunately, the only match inside the matchbox was not lit. Upon seeing this, Zhou Yan approached with a smile and took out a lighter from his pocket to light Shi Wanchun's cigarette. Shi Wanchun took a puff of smoke and looked at the lighter in Zhou Yan's hand. "Why do you still carry this thing with you?" Zhou Yan chuckled and placed the lighter on the table. He then took out a bag of Red Pagoda Mountain from his pocket and placed it on the table. "A few days ago, I had a sudden idea and wanted to try smoking, so I bought a bag. However, the experience was mediocre. I can't use this cigarette or lighter, so I'm showing my respect to you." He was just a smoker before wearing more and more. After coming, he habitually wanted to smoke, so he went to buy cigarettes and lighters. However, as soon as the cigarette was lit, it choked him. Since that's the case, he decided to quit. Looking at the lighter and cigarette, Shi Wanchun showed a surprised expression, as if he no longer knew Zhou Yan. Zhou Yan had never done such a thing before, nor would he say such things. Among the 87-year-old students, Shi Wanchun's favorite is Zhou Yan, not only because of his good academic performance, but also because of his simple mind and lack of focus, making him a good student of music. A while ago, Zhou Yan fell ill and took a leave of absence from school. Shi Wanchun was also quite regretful, fearing that this matter would affect Zhou Yan. But now it seems that his concern is not unreasonable. After a serious illness, Zhou Yan's changes were very significant. With a deep sigh, Shi Wanchun said, "The procedures for taking a leave of absence have been completed. If you want to cancel it, it cannot be done immediately. After the process is completed, this semester will come to an end. You have two options now. The first is to take a leave of absence until April next year, and be with the next class of students, which is equivalent to repeating the grade. The second is to wait until the next semester to take the Make.Up exam and still stay in this class. Newcomer's new book, Please Forgive Me a Lot, end of this chapter. Chapter 2. Find You a Job. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Find you a job. Upon hearing these two choices, Zhou Yan scratched his head and said, "Why don't we take a break until April next year?" In fact, Zhou Yan didn't want to choose either because he didn't feel like he could continue graduating from the music academy. The memories of his predecessor were like slides stored in his mind, accessible but delayed. For example, when playing the piano, the score is in his mind and he remembers what each key represents and the piano technique, but playing each note requires a delay of 1 or 2 seconds. He is not sure how long this situation will last. It is very likely to be like this forever. So in the current situation, he can only choose to take a leave of absence until April next year, which will also provide a longer buffer time. If it continues to be like this in April next year, he won't be able to stay at Central Broadcasting. Upon hearing Zhou Yan's words, Shi Wanchun nodded and said, "Don't slack off even if you stay at home. Taking care of your body is important, but you can't neglect your homework. Otherwise, coming over in April next year will bring a lot of pressure. Are you ready to go home during this period of school leave?" Zhou Yan shook his head and said, "I haven't figured it out yet. Let's take a closer look." The family relationship of Zhou Yan in this world is quite complex. He has 3 siblings, with an older brother Zhou Hong who is 3 years older than him and a younger sister Zhou Qing who is 5 years younger than him. When Zhou Yan was 10 years old, his parents divorced. After the divorce, his brother Zhou Hong and sister Zhou Qing both followed their father, while Zhou Yan followed his mother. When Zhou Yan was 16 years old, his mother passed away and his father wanted to take him back, but he refused. The thought of the original owner's family situation made Zhou Yan's head ache. He really didn't want to go back and face it. Even though he knew he would have to face it sooner or later, he hoped to delay it for a day. Shi Wanchun glanced at Zhou Yan and said, "It's okay to stay at school. Your beds are all there, except for not attending classes. Everything else is normal. Even if you repeat your grades next year, the dormitory will remain unchanged, so there's no need to rush to move out." Zhou Yan nodded and said, I'll stay at school for now." Shi Wanchun tapped on the table and pondered, "Since you're not in a hurry to leave, I'll arrange a task for you. It can help you meet your daily needs and keep you in shape." After speaking, Shi Wanchun took out a note from the drawer and said, "Go to this address at 9:30 a.m. the day after tomorrow." Zhou Yan took the note and read the words on it, XC District Xiehe Road de Buddha Hutong. "Director Shi, what am I doing at this address?" Shi Wanchun took a puff of smoke and looked at Zhou Yan with a smile through the smoke. "Our school alumnus, teacher Zhao Jiping, is going to provide music guidance for a movie and would like to hire a music assistant who can stay on the set. You happen to be taking a break from school to see the world, and there is a reward. I have already told teacher Zhao about this matter, and the morning after tomorrow, you can go to this address to find teacher Zhao." Upon hearing this, Zhou Yan immediately blushed and said, "Director Shi, my current physical condition doesn't make me suitable to serve as a music assistant." Shi Wanchun snorted unhappily and said, "What's wrong with your health? I see you're doing very well now. According to Jia Guoping and his team, you just wander around the school if you have something to do and start running early every now and then. Also, do you think you already have this music assistant in your hands? I'll tell you, you're not the only one running for election this time. If you don't do your best, you may not be able to win this job." Zhou Yan widened his eyes and said, "Do you have any competitors?" Shi Wanchun sneered, "It's so fresh. Being able to learn from teacher Zhao and get money is naturally a competition among a bunch of people. Why, I feel a little uneasy." Zhou Yan waved his hand repeatedly and said, No, Director Shi, don't worry, I will definitely arrive on time the day after tomorrow at 9 a.m. "That's all right, you go first," Shi Wanchun waved his hand. "Go back and prepare well, don't miss the opportunity to embarrass me." "Okay." After Zhou Yan left, Shi Wanchun smiled and shook his head. As expected, this young man still wanted to be excited. As soon as Zhou Yan heard about a competitor, he became enthusiastic. After Zhou Yan walked out of Shi Wanchun's office, he also smiled. Since there were competitors, it was not his turn to do this job no matter what. It would be better to go for a walk then. Zhou Yan also knew that Shi Wanchun was for his good. Zhao Jiping was a big shot in the music industry, and being able to learn from him and earn money was naturally beneficial to him without any harm. But the key is that his current situation is special, and it may be difficult for him to do the work of a music assistant. If he really runs around aimlessly and ends up ruining someone else's business, his own shame will come second, and it will be embarrassing to have Director Shi follow along. 2 days later, at 8 o'clock in the morning, Zhou Yan arrived at the place according to the address written on the note. The appointment was to meet at 9 o'clock, and he arrived an hour early, thinking that his performance would definitely not be good, but his attitude should be correct, at least to make Director Shi lose some face. The agreed address was a courtyard. When Zhou Yan arrived, the gate of the courtyard was open, and there was no one in the courtyard, only a big yellow cat sleeping under the grape frame. Upon hearing the commotion, the big yellow cat opened its eyes and glanced at Zhou Yan, then closed them again. The fleeting gaze was quite aloof. Zhou Yan raised the corner of his mouth and smiled, then stood at the door and shouted inside, "Hello, is anyone there?" With this shout, someone inside quickly responded, "Hey." Then a middle-aged man emerged from the inner room, wearing a white shirt. His hairline had long been lost, and his hair was still thick on both sides, but in the middle was already a Mediterranean. Zhou Yan recognized him as Zhao Jiping and greeted him with a smile, "Hello Teacher Zhao." Zhao Jiping looked up and down at Zhou Yan, then smiled and said, "Are you Xiao Zhou? I didn't agree with Director Shi to let you come at 9 o'clock. Why did you come so early? There's nothing to do in the morning, so come earlier. I didn't disturb your rest, did I?" Zhao Jiping waved his hand and said, "Hey, no, come and sit down for a while. I have some things to do." Zhou Yan lifted his foot and walked into the courtyard, then followed Zhao Jiping's buttocks into the inner room. Inside, Zhao Jiping pointed to the kettle and teacup on the table and said, "Xiao Zhou, could you please pour the water yourself? I'll come back to you after I'm busy." "Teacher Zhao, you're busy. I'll sit by myself for a while." Zhao Jiping nodded and then sat down on another table inside, burying his head in writing. Zhou Yan didn't want to drink water in the early morning, so he sat on a chair and looked at the room. This courtyard is quite exquisite, but the interior of the house seems a bit monotonous. Apart from a square table surrounded by 6 chairs in the main hall, there is only the long table where Zhao Jiping is currently buried writing, and there is nothing else that looks good. Cute new book, end of this chapter. Chapter 3. Interview. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Interview. After waiting for about 10 minutes, Zhao Jiping finally finished writing. He put down his pen and stretched lazily, then turned to Zhou Yan and said, "Xiao Zhou, I'm sorry for taking up your time." No, I came too early." Zhou Yan waved his hand repeatedly. Zhao Jiping looked up and down at Zhou Yan again and said with a smile, "Director Shi told you, there are other people here today, and you may have come for nothing." Zhou Yan also smiled and said, "Teacher Zhao is joking. It's not a waste of time to see you once. You studied at our school 10 years ago, and our department still has a legend about you. Many of our classmates take you as a role model. When they hear that I'm coming to see you, they are also envious." Upon hearing Zhou Yan's words, Zhao Jiping raised his eyebrows, somewhat surprised. When Shi Wanchun recommended candidates to him earlier, he also roughly introduced Zhou Yan's situation. Shi Wanchun told him that Zhou Yan was a young man with a simple mind, a childlike heart, but not good at speaking. But now this first side has overturned Zhao Jiping's impression. Zhou Yan in front of him has a pretty appearance, but he is not the kind of person who is not good at speaking like Shi Wanchun said. If he were really not good at speaking, such a scene would not come easily. However, although Zhou Yan's performance cannot be said to be simple, it is definitely not considered slippery. Overall, it gives a good feeling, mainly due to his good looks and spirit. Zhao Jiping looked at the watch on his wrist and said, "Originally, there were quite a few people coming to apply, but the basic conditions couldn't be met. It's not that I have strict requirements, but the working time may be 2 months, or 3 to 5 months. So what I want is to be able to free up half a year. If we don't meet this requirement, we won't talk about it. In this way, there won't be many people who can meet the requirements. In addition to other reasons, there is one who barely meets the requirements besides you. The other person will also come later, and when he arrives, we will give you a simple test. After giving Zhou Yan a rough overview of the situation, Zhao Jiping smiled again and said, "Director Shi told me about your situation. You have performed well in your studies, but your illness has delayed the progress of your studies. While he is regretful, he also feels that your situation is just right for me to come here." Zhou Yan smiled and was about to respond when he heard a knocking on the door from outside. Then he heard a young voice, "Teacher Zhao." Zhao Jiping replied loudly, "Inside, come in." Then he said to Zhou Yan, "When it comes to Chow Chow, it should be another one." Before Zhao Jiping could finish speaking, a young man about the same age as Zhou Yan walked in. He was not tall, looked less than 1.7 meters tall, and had a relatively thin body. As soon as he entered the door, he quickly glanced at Zhou Yan, then raised his hand and said to Zhao Jiping with a smile, "Teacher Zhao, on this hot day, I bought you some fruit to eat and play with." Zhao Jiping quickly waved his hand and said, "Shaoyang, I understand your intentions, but I cannot accept this fruit. You can take it back when it's over." Upon hearing Zhao Jiping's suggestion not to accept it, Shaoyang became a bit anxious and directly picked up the fruit inside. "Even a little fruit is not worth any money, so don't hesitate," he said. Zhao Jiping is clearly not someone who likes to pull things around, and fruits are not really anything valuable. He nodded and said, "Okay, you can put them down." When Xiaoyang put down the fruit, Zhao Jiping introduced, "This is Liang Shiwen, a senior in the recording department of Yanjing Film Academy. Xiaoyang, this is Zhou Yan, a junior at the Central Conservatory of Music." The two of them shook hands briefly and greeted each other. Zhao Jiping looked at his watch and said, "The reason why I made an appointment with you at 9 o'clock is because there is a movie on TV at 9 o'clock today, and I will use it as a test for the two of you. However, it's only less than 8:30 now, and there is still more than half an hour before the movie starts. Let's talk first, and when it's time, we can turn on the TV later." Zhou Yan and the others had no choice but to start chatting. If it's talking about music, Zhou Yan may still be a bit worried, but fortunately Zhao Jiping didn't talk about music, just some daily conversations. Kardashian is Zhou Yan's strong suit, and he has been a person of 2 generations with a wide range of knowledge. As long as he is not a professional, he can chat for a while. Liang Shiwen next to him is eager to interject, but he always cannot find the right time. Occasionally, he interjects, but he does not receive much response. More than 30 minutes were neither too short nor too long, and it quickly passed. At 8:58, Zhao Jiping looked at his watch and patted his forehead, saying, "We talked so happily. We almost forgot the main thing. The movie is about to be aired, and I'll turn on the TV for you now." The TV is on, and the movie hasn't started yet. There is an animated advertisement playing on the TV. "Justice brings blessings, justice brings blessings, we must kill the pests." Looking at the pesticide advertisement playing on the TV screen, Zhou Yan scratched his head. It was the first time he had seen an advertisement on TV, which gave him a strong sense of contrast that he had not seen before. The advertisement ended quickly and the movie arrived as scheduled. It turned out that today's show was Red Sorghum. No wonder Zhao Jiping chose this movie, because the music director for this movie is Zhao Jiping. Zhao Jiping smiled and said, "During the movie's broadcast, you can say whatever ideas you have directly. Of course, you can also wait until the end of the movie to discuss them." Zhou Yan has read the original novel, Red Sorghum, many times. He had only watched the movie once before, but this time he watched the movie again, his feelings were completely different. Whether it was because of his composition student's body, or because today Zhao Jiping's exam for them was in terms of music, he paid more attention to the music and sound effects in the movie. Zhou Yan was able to hear the instruments used for the music and the direction of the music, but at this point, he had already expended a lot of effort and could not immediately analyze the role of these instruments in the current scene. But Liang Shiwen was different. He was clearly well prepared. As soon as the opening scene of the movie was over, he rushed to speak up. The wind and percussion used for welcoming the wedding here uses a combination of suona, waist drum, and human voice. At the same time, in order to express the joy and harmony of the wedding, a major key is used as the harmony. As soon as Liang Shiwen spoke, he couldn't stop, and next was almost his personal performance. In order to express Zhou's unwillingness, the music and visuals are not synchronized, reflecting a sense of helplessness and sadness. The song Wine God Song is full of passion, with a high voice, expressing the joy of the buddies here. Here, the Wine God Song reappears, but it is full of sadness and sorrow. The film repeatedly uses folk songs and minor tunes with distinctive Shangxi characteristics, combining suona, sheng, and large arrow drums, breaking the conventional way of music. Newcomer's New Book, end of this chapter. Chapter 4. Teacher Su Tong. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Teacher Su Tong. Every time Zhou Yan falls behind Liang Shiwen, he simply lies flat and allows Liang Shiwen to fully unleash his abilities. Whether it's his solid professional knowledge or doing his homework ahead of schedule, he performs much better than Zhou Yan. At the beginning, Zhao Jiping occasionally glanced at Zhou Yan, hoping for his performance. However, when he saw Zhou Yan lying flat, he didn't focus on him anymore. Although Zhao Jiping already had an answer in his heart before the movie ended, he waited until the end of the movie and asked Zhou Yan, do you have any insights to add? Zhou Yan knew it wouldn't be useful to make up for it at this moment, so he shook his head with a smile and said, Liang Shiwen said very well. I don't have anything to add. Zhao Jiping nodded and then stood up. That's all for today's interview. I won't keep you guys for dinner. Let's go back and wait for news. Zhou Yan and Liang Shiwen also nodded, and after a few scenes with Zhao Jiping, they left. After leaving Zhao Jiping's yard, Zhou Yan smiled and said to Liang Shiwen, Liang, you performed very well today. See you in the future if you have the chance. After finishing speaking, Zhou Yan was about to leave, but he didn't expect Liang Shiwen to chuckle and say, they say you're a genius in the composition department, but at first glance today, it's just that. After saying this, Liang Shiwen strode out of the alley. Zhou Yan looked at Liang Shiwen's back with a puzzled expression on his face. Surprisingly, this young man had two faces after his predecessors, and by what he meant by these words, he already knew himself before. That's not right. Zhou Yan is indeed quite famous in this department, but he doesn't even know about Yanjing Film Academy, right? The saying of genius is somewhat exaggerated, and how did it get passed on? Strange, really strange. If you can't figure it out, don't think anymore. Zhou Yan shook his head and was ready to go back to school. However, halfway through the alley, a young man walked across from him. Zhou Yan looked familiar with him. This person looks 27 or 8 years old, of average height, thin, and wearing a pair of black-framed glasses. When he walked, he half lowered his head, so Zhou Yan was not sure if it was the person he thought of. When the two of them approached, Zhou Yan quickly lowered his head and glanced, then widened his eyes and exclaimed in surprise, Teacher Su Tong. Su Tong was startled and then looked up in confusion. His eyes were not small, but they were always squinted. Looking at Zhou Yan, Su Tong's brain was spinning rapidly, but he didn't remember where he had seen the person in front of him before. Are you? Seeing that the other party did not deny that he was Su Tong, Zhou Yan excitedly shook Su Tong's hand and said, Teacher Su Tong, hello, I am Zhou Yan, your loyal reader. I dare say I have read all of your novels, and I am so happy to meet you here. Su Tong was completely confused by Zhou Yan's enthusiasm. When did he become so famous that he could be recognized on the street? Sorry, I really don't remember where I saw you. Zhou Yan still held Su Tong's hand and said, Hey, I've seen you before. You haven't seen me before. I used to go to Yenjing Normal University to play, and you went back once. I happened to meet you and looked from a distance. There were many people around you at that time, so I didn't feel like going up to say hello to you. This statement is purely fabricated. Zhou Yan often saw Su Tong on TV later on, but Su Tong believed this lie because it sounded quite reasonable. Encountering her loyal reader, Su Tong was also very happy, completely ignoring that her hand was still being held by Zhou Yan. Do you live here? Zhou Yan shook his head and said, I'm not. I'm studying at Central Radio and I have some business to attend to today. And you, how did you get here? I'm also here to find a friend. Upon hearing Su Tong's words, Zhou Yan immediately realized that Su Tong might be looking for Zhao Jiping. Previously, Shi Wanchun told him that Zhao Jiping was going to score for a movie, but he didn't say what it was. Now that Su Tong appears here, the movie is likely to be The Big Red Lantern Hangs High, because the original work is Su Tong's novel, Wives and Concubines in a Group. Are you here to find teacher Zhao Jiping? You know. Oh, by the way, you're from Central Music. Yeah, teacher Zhao and I are alumni. Have you ever been to his house? Let me take you there. After speaking, Zhou Yan enthusiastically led the way in front, and Su Tong naturally followed behind. Although Zhou Yan's naturally familiar personality was very different from Su Tong, Zhou Yan gave people a comfortable feeling from beginning to end, mainly facing his loyal readers. Su Tong was also in a good mood. It was only a few steps from where they met to Zhao Jiping's yard, and in just a few words, the two of them arrived at the yard. Zhao Jiping was watering flowers in the yard when he first saw Zhou Yan come in. He was about to ask if something had fallen from Zhou Yan when he saw Su Tong following behind. Teacher Su Tong, you're here. Su Tong smiled and said, You came a bit early. Zhou Yan also took the initiative to explain, I was about to leave when I happened to meet teacher Su Tong. Zhao Jiping didn't ask Zhou Yan why he knew Su Tong, but nodded and said, That's quite a coincidence. It's quite a coincidence, Su Tong took over the conversation. I didn't expect to be recognized by people walking on the street either. Zhou Yan has a really good memory. Zhao Jiping glanced at Zhou Yan and said, Zhou Yan, you have also read novels by teacher Su Tong. Zhou Yan nodded and said, I have read all of teacher Su Tong's novels. Upon hearing these words, Zhao Jiping furrowed his brows and said to himself that this young man didn't make a draft when he talked big. Originally, Zhou Yan's performance in today's interview didn't make him feel good, but now it's even worse. Have you also watched Wives and Concubines in a Group? Zhou Yan nodded again and said, Yes, I have read A Group of Wives and Concubines many times. This is definitely a novel that can prove that teacher Su Tong is at the forefront of literature. In fact, Zhou Yan also felt Zhao Jiping's displeasure, but he didn't say anything big, so he naturally had a clear conscience. Su Tong felt a bit embarrassed when praised, I dare not say that he is at the forefront, but it is indeed a work that I have been quite satisfied with in recent years. Zhao Jiping squinted his eyes and thought to himself, Don't blame me for making you feel embarrassed when you talk about running on the train. He said, Since that's the case, why don't you talk about this novel? Zhou Yan laughed. He knew that Zhao Jiping was testing him, but he was not worried at all. While he might have been a bit scared when it came to music appreciation, it was precisely his strength when it came to literary appreciation. The novel, A Group of Wives and Concubines has many aspects worth studying, but since it is in front of teacher Zhao, let me briefly talk about its performance in auditory narrative. Upon hearing Zhou Yan's words, Zhao Jiping couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Auditory narrative is not a complex word, but it sounds very professional. Su Tong himself graduated from the Chinese Department of Yuan Normal University. When he was in school, he immersed himself in literary theory every day, and when he heard auditory narration, he felt quite familiar. Good evening, pig stomach. Newcomer's new book seeking support, end of this chapter. Chapter 5. A little literary shock for you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. A little literary shock for you. Zhou Yan didn't know what the two of them were thinking at this moment, so he continued, when it comes to auditory narrative, it's natural to mention auditory space. Before discussing auditory space, we must first talk about listening. Listening and observation are relative, the latter points to vision, and the former points to hearing, indicating a person's ability to mobilize their hearing to capture sound, speculate, and respond. Therefore, auditory space is constructed by narrating the occurrence of sound and the series of activities that characters engage in after hearing sound. Such a professional statement not only surprised Su Tong, who was an insider, but also shocked even the layman Zhao Jiping. Zhao Jiping had never heard the word listening before, but with Zhou Yan's explanation, he immediately understood. If Zhou Yan were a Chinese language student, Zhao Jiping would not be surprised. At best, he thought that the student's expression ability was quite good. But Zhou Yan is a student in the composition department of Central Conservatory of Music. Why is he so familiar with literary theory? This kind of thing is not something that can be understood just by reading books. Zhao Jiping himself likes to read novels, but he doesn't understand any of these literary theories. Su Tong graduated from the Chinese Department of Yuan Normal University. He has analyzed many people's works, but he has not analyzed his own works. After the publication of Wives and Concubines in a Group, some people have commented on this novel, but when it comes to auditory space, Su Tong is still the first to see it, so he is also quite curious. Zhou Yan, continue speaking. Zhou Yan nodded and continued, in the novel, the garden is a very typical auditory space. The room where Song Lian lives is only a wall away from the garden, so she can hear various sounds in the garden. The first time she listens to the garden, Song Lian is happy but confused. At this time, what he hears is the cicadas chirping on the wisteria branches and leaves. The second time he listens. Regarding the plot in the novel, Zhou Yan is well versed in it and can easily come up with it. Even the original author Su Tong, upon hearing something mentioned by Zhou Yan, had to hold her forehead and think for a while before she could confirm that she had indeed written it in the novel. At this moment, the conversation completely entered Zhou Yan's rhythm. Finally entering his own home field, Zhou Yan became more and more enthusiastic as he spoke. After finishing his speech on auditory space, he began to analyze some details in detail. Let's talk about the action of knocking, which inevitably accompanies the production of sound. Foucault regarded space as a carrier of power, and closure has become a hodgepodge of various factors that abuse power. The power relationships between characters are different, and the reactions of listeners to knocking on the door are naturally different. When he heard this, Su Tong had already confirmed Zhou Yan's professionalism. If it weren't for Zhao Jiping being here, he would have doubted the identity of Zhou Yan as a student of Yangyin. Even if Zhou Yan tells Su Tong now that he is not a student of Central Conservatory of Music but a student of the Chinese Department of Yuan Normal University, Su Tong will not doubt it. Zhao Jiping's heart was full of doubts, as he didn't understand why Zhou Yan appeared so slow in music but so stunning in literature. He couldn't figure out the reason, but there were some changes in his mind regarding the choice of assistant composer. Previously, he would have chosen Liang Xiwen without hesitation, but now he is gradually leaning towards Zhou Yan. In fact, the requirements for music cultivation in this job are not high. What is required is sensitivity to details. After all, the final score work is still done by Zhao Jiping himself, and most assistants only do some on-site recording work. However, Zhou Yan's observation of details has reached an astonishing level. Speaking of which, Zhou Yan has also been studying at the Central Conservatory of Music for 2.5 years. How poor are his basic functions? The poor performance before may have been due to nervousness, or it could have been due to not being exposed to music for some time and being a bit unfamiliar. Okay, even if Zhou Yan's music foundation is really not good, Zhao Jiping also wants to keep Zhou Yan and find a good music assistant for him later. After a moment of contemplation, Zhao Jiping smiled and said to Su Tong, "Teacher Su Tong, let me formally introduce you again. Director Shi Wanchun from Zhou Yan Yanjian recommended him as my music assistant, and he will coordinate the music work for wives and concubines in a group on site in the future." Su Tong showed a sudden expression and said, "I see. No wonder Zhou Yan has such a deep understanding of the auditory space in novels. Now I have more and more confidence in the soundtrack of movies. With Zhou Yan's assistance from teacher Zhao, the soundtrack of this movie is very exciting." Zhao Jiping smiled and looked at Zhou Yan again. "Zhou Yan, if you have anything to do today, go back first. I will talk to you later about the specific matters of going to the production team." Zhou Yan blinked his eyes. He knew that Zhao Jiping should have something to talk to Su Tong about, so this was a farewell gesture. However, it also revealed a meaning that he was confirmed to be hired as the music assistant. Although Zhou Yan wanted to talk to Zhao Jiping about this matter again, he knew the situation was not right, so he smiled and nodded, "Okay, I'll wait for your message. Teacher Su Tong, you're here to talk to Teacher Zhao. There's something else to do with my school, so I'll excuse you for now." Su Tong responded with a smile, "It's okay, you can go ahead and get busy. Since you're the music assistant for wives and concubines, there will definitely be another chance to meet in the future. Let's talk about it next time." After coming out of Zhao Jiping's yard, Zhou Yan walked slowly in the alley. He didn't expect that the road would turn, and he finally got the job of a music assistant with a solid foundation in literary theory. This is like going to a hotel to apply for a position as a chef, and the dishes that the boss doesn't like are left behind because they can sing. Although Zhou Yan initially worried that he wouldn't be able to handle it, it doesn't seem like a big problem now. This job isn't as difficult as he imagined. And it's also good to be able to work at a film studio. If he really wants to stay at school, he doesn't know where to go. I just don't know how much money this music assistant can earn from his work. He's really not worried about food and drink at school now, but there will always be places to spend money in the future. Moreover, Zhou Yan has always lacked a sense of security. There is no money in his wallet, and his sense of security has decreased by half. Meeting Su Tong today made Zhou Yan feel quite interesting, which can also be considered a blessing of time travel. He is a middle school teacher, barely a small writer, and has published great works in many second-rate literary magazines. Before, his most glorious moment in life was publishing a poem in the poetry magazine, but later on, the poetry magazine declined and was not as good as before. When Zhou Yan walked out of the alley unsteadily, he first smelt a strong smell of mutton soup, and then heard a grumbling protest from his stomach. He came early in the morning and only ate a tea egg pad left last night. From a distance, I glanced at the place where the lamb soup drifted in. It was a small lamb soup restaurant, and by the time I was ordering, the restaurant was already full. At the entrance of the restaurant, there were also customers sitting on a horseshoe holding a large bowl of lamb soup. Seeing such a scene, it goes without saying that this lamb soup must be delicious. Unfortunately, although the lamb soup was delicious, Zhou Yan not only had an empty stomach but also an empty waist, so he could only swallow his saliva and walk towards the bus stop. Now that he is back at school, he can still catch lunch in the cafeteria. On the way to the bus stop, Zhou Yan was still thinking that next time he came, he must go and have some lamb soup. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. You have a star style. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. You have a star style. The next morning, Shi Wanchun called Zhou Yan into the office again. When we met again, Shi Wanchun smiled very happily, with a few more folds on his face. Teacher Zhao called me and he said you performed well yesterday. He decided to hire you as his music assistant. You guys are quite impressive and didn't embarrass me, he said. Zhou Yan scratched his head and complimented, it's all because you taught well, director. Shi Wanchun looked up and down at Zhou Yan and said, after you fell ill for a while, you have changed a lot. I work as a music assistant for Teacher Zhao, with a monthly fee of 150 yuan. The set is managed by food and accommodation, and the conditions are just like this. You can ask for anything you want. Zhou Yan shook his head and said, I don't have any requirements. It's my honor to be able to study behind Teacher Zhao, even if there's no salary. Besides, it's 150. Of course, 150 is not very high, but it's about managing food and housing, and Zhou Yan hasn't graduated yet. This salary can be said to be very good. Nowadays, the income of the domestic film and television industry is not high, and many male and female leads in TV dramas only earn 1 or 200 yuan per episode. Since that's the case, you can go to Teacher Zhao's residence again this afternoon and he will explain the specific matters to you. Speaking of this, Shi Wanchun said earnestly, although it's a temporary part-time job and you represent Teacher Zhao, no one should be difficult for you on set, but you also need to have multiple perspectives. There are still differences between society and school. Zhou Yan immediately assured me, don't worry, teacher. I will definitely be a person with my tail between my legs when I'm outside. Shi Wanchun was so angry with him that he blew his beard and glared, roll around. Obey me. When Zhou Yan walked out of the office, Shi Wanchun also shook his head and sighed. Zhou Yan is such a good seedling, and I don't know what his future path will be like. However, what pleased him was that in the end, Zhou Yan did not call him Director Shi again. After Zhou Yan returned, he started packing his luggage and was ready to go to the set at any time. In fact, he didn't have much to prepare. He only brought a thin piece of bedding and a roll of cool mat to change clothes and do laundry. In the afternoon, he went to Zhao Jiping's residence again. Zhao Jiping explained some specific matters to him, and then asked him to go back to school. Tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, just wait at the school gate. Zhao Jiping has already contacted a good person to take him to the set. The next morning, Zhou Yan arrived at the school gate half an hour early with his luggage and waited, facing the bright sun, watching the cars coming and going on the road. It was then that Zhou Yan deeply felt the inconveniences of this era. There is no phone, so he can only wait here in advance, not knowing when the other party will arrive, and unable to contact. Until 10 o'clock, a layer of oil was shining on Zhou Yan's face, and a Mitsubishi Delica van stopped in front of him. A particularly large head protruded from the cab, with a pair of sunglasses hanging on it. The head opened its mouth and said, "Hey, is Xiaozhou?" Finally, he waited for the person, and Zhou Yan breathed a sigh of relief. He quickly replied, "Hey, hello master, I'm Zhou Yan. Get in the car." "Hey, good." Zhou Yan nodded, first opened the back door to put his luggage on, and then sat in the passenger seat. This is the second-generation flat-top version of the Mitsubishi Delica, and the back seat has been almost disassembled, filled with miscellaneous props. As soon as Zhou Yan got into the car, his seat belt had not even been fastened, so the driver stepped on the accelerator and drove forward. Feeling the impatience of his master, Zhou Yan didn't say anything and instead fastened his seatbelt on his own. After the car had driven for a while and stabilized, Zhou Yan took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket and handed 2 to the driver. "Master, do you smoke?" The master glanced sideways at the Hilton cigarette box in Zhou Yan's hand and then took it over. After taking the cigarette, the master's face also softened a bit. He first lit the cigarette, slowly took a sip of smoke, and said, "There were too many things this morning, which took up a lot of time. Otherwise, I could have come earlier. My name is Lu Qing, just call me Lu Gu. I'm from the scene-making team. Are you not interested?" Zhou Yan smiled and waved his hand, "I don't smoke." Don't smoke, right? Lu Qing smiled meaningfully. You kid, I think you're good. What role did you play in this play? I'm not an actor, I'm a music assistant. Oh, no wonder it's at the entrance of the Central Conservatory of Music, Lu Qing nodded suddenly. I thought you were an actor, but I think you have quite an actor's temperament. Zhou Yan asked with great interest, Brother Lu, what are the qualities of actors? Lu Qing took a sip of his cigarette and said with a smile, actors, there are all kinds of them. You belong to the cream type, don't you know Tang Guoqiang? Of course I know Teacher Tang. You have a similar temperament to him before. Huh, Brother Lu, you're joking. I'm not joking, it's a pity you're not an actor. But as a music assistant, why did you come so early? The filming has just started, and there aren't many people around. If you really want to get on, it's probably until early August. Zhou Yan smiled and said, isn't it all arranged by Teacher Zhao? When will the movie officially start filming? Lu Qing thought for a moment and said, the actual start of filming is probably in September because this movie has scenes of snow. Starting from September, filming will take 3 months, and it should be snowing in the western part of Shaanxi. Zhou Yan nodded, no wonder Zhao Jiping said he wanted to leave half a year for filming. Starting in September, filming will continue for another 3 months, which will take about 6 months. However, Zhou Yan felt that going so early was of no use to him, and since the set was not filmed, there was nothing wrong with him going. Later, Zhou Yan talked to Lu Qing about the movie and gained a better understanding of both the movie and Lu Qing's personal life. The movie was filmed in the Qiao family courtyard in Qi County, western Shaanxi province. It is said that the production team also put in a lot of effort to film in it. Lu Qing felt a bit difficult to get along with when I first got to know him, but after chatting with him for a while, I could tell that he was quite enthusiastic and willing to share some things about the set with Zhou Yan. The production team is now entering the venue, starting with the preliminary set work. Other teams, including actors, will gradually enter the venue in early August. There is a distance of 400 to 500 kilometers from Yanjing to Qixin. According to their speed, even if they don't rest in the middle, they have to drive for 8 to 9 hours. Even if Zhou Yan is good at talking big, he can't move during the conversation and can only hold his chest in a daze. Lu Qing asked Zhou Yan to sleep several times, but Zhou Yan didn't sleep. Firstly, it was impolite for him to sleep next to someone else while driving, and secondly, leaving Lu Qing driving alone can easily lead to accidents. Midway through, Zhou Yan almost suggested that he take over a segment, but in the end, he gave up the idea because he doesn't have a driver's license now, and it would be troublesome if caught. Fortunately, although the journey was long, there were no accidents in the middle. At 7 o'clock in the evening, they successfully arrived at the Qiao family courtyard. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Your good days are coming to an end, son. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Your good days are coming to an end, son. To Zhou Yan's surprise, the crew of The Big Red Lantern Hangs High actually lived directly in the Qiao family courtyard. Because The Big Red Lantern Hangs High and the Qiao family courtyard have not yet been produced, the Qiao family courtyard is not very famous. It is just one of many courtyards in western Shaanxi province and one of the jigsaw puzzles of the glory of Shaanxi merchants. The Qiao family courtyard has a history of over 200 years, and the entire courtyard takes on a double happiness shape. There are a total of 6 courtyards, with 20 small courtyards inside, and a total of 331 houses. These were all told to Zhou Yan by Lu Qing on the way. In fact, they only used the 5th courtyard for filming, and the other 5 courtyards were not used. Zhou Yan was assigned to a separate room, which, according to Lu Qing, was prepared for other departments. The so-called other departments refer to non-on-site departments such as music, editing, color mixing, and screenwriting. These departments actually have a lot of people together, but most of them are not always on set, so only one room is prepared for them. The room is not too big, with 4 bunk beds, one of which has already been fitted with a mat and a neatly stacked blanket. Lu Qing smiled and introduced to Zhou Yan, teacher Zhen came a few days ago and stayed there for 3 or 4 days. Zhou Yan had heard of Zhen and knew that he was the screenwriter of this drama. He didn't know much about anything else. He looked around the room and asked, "Is anyone living in the other beds?" Lu Qing waved her hand and said, "No, except for Teacher Ni's bed, you can sleep in any of the other beds. Now this room is your single room, and I think you can enjoy a single room for a long time." Zhou Yan smiled and said, "Then my treatment is quite good." "That's not it, okay, you tidy up and I'll go see if there's any food left in the kitchen." After saying that, Lu Qing turned around and left. Zhou Yan put down his luggage, first cleaned the room briefly, and then chose a new bed. The beds were all new and could be easily cleaned to make a mat. When the bed was tidied up, Lu Qing came in carrying 2 bowls of noodles. "Don't be busy, come and have some food. We're lucky, the chef left some leftover noodles tonight." Zhou Yan smiled and took the bowl of noodles. "Fortunately, you came with Lu, otherwise I would really be hungry." "Hey, it's a small joke." Lu Qing waved his hand and took out a small bottle from his pocket. He asked Zhou Yan with a smile, "Do you want some?" Although there was no label on the bottle, Zhou Yan knew it was wine inside, and most of the bottles contained high alcohol. He smiled and refused, "I can't come here, I'll have some soup." "You will definitely live a long life in the future, not smoking or drinking." Lu Qing joked, first eating a garlic seed, then opening the bottle and looking up to take a sip. "Hey, that's great." Even though Zhou Yan usually doesn't drink alcohol, seeing Lu Qing drinking with such refreshing energy gives him the illusion that alcohol is very delicious. However, he knows that drinking alcohol is indeed enjoyable for others, and it's really difficult to drink it on his own. The noodles are quite good, with a bowl full of 2-finger-wide ramen and a layer of sauzi covering it. Although sauzi is pure vegetarian, it looks quite oily and appetizing. The only regret is that there is no spicy oil, otherwise this meal would be perfect. In less than 3 minutes, it's clean with noodles and soup. Lu Qing was busy drinking and only took a few bites of noodles. He looked up at Zhou Yan and said, "You look quite thin, but you can eat. Are you full?" Hiccup, Zhou Yan answered the question with a full burp. The days on set were much easier than Zhou Yan had anticipated. The early stage of the filming was still in the preparation stage, and he had no more tasks. Every day, he just wandered around and quickly got to know all the people in the filming team. He is a handsome young man who smiles all day long. Not only does he have lively eyes, but his mouth is also sweet like honey. The crew has never been praised by him, so everyone in the production team likes him and loves to chat with him. During the day, Zhou Yan would help everywhere, and at night he would go back to his single room and write something when he had nothing to do. Although he is from the composition department and has now joined the production team, Mr. Lu Sun once said that eggs cannot be put in the same basket, and Zhou Yan had to plan for his future career. He has carefully studied and found that most of the ways to earn money are too far away from him. Copying articles and publishing them may be the most practical way at this stage. Since it was copying books, it was natural for it to be done quickly. For short stories, it would take 1 or 2 days to complete, and for medium stories, it wouldn't take more than a week. Zhou Yan stayed on the set for a month and has already sent 7 more novels, but there hasn't been a single reply. In the second month, there were significant changes on the set. Not only did many behind-the-scenes staff come, but the first batch of actors were also about to arrive on site. On the morning of July 19th, after having breakfast, Zhou Yan ran to the doorstep of the courtyard and sat there to cool off. He had studied that the entire 5th courtyard had the strongest ventilation at the entrance, so he developed the habit of sitting on the doorstep to cool off. For this reason, the big brothers and sisters of the filming team even gave Zhou Yan a nickname, Door God. As soon as Zhou Yan sat down, he heard a clear sound. Yoha, the door god started working so early today. Zhou Yan looked up and saw the young woman standing in front of him, showing a bright smile. Miss Feng, have you eaten yet? This is not a respectful title, but rather the young woman's real name is Feng de sister. When she heard that there was a younger sister at home named Feng de sister, I don't know if she was joking or if there was something really going on. On set, both young people like Zhou Yan and those older brothers and seniors like to call her real name Feng de Jie. Sister Feng, as her name suggests, has a lively and cheerful demeanor. She patted her stomach and smiled, it's almost digested. Don't sit here either. The director and his team will come over later, so you can sit here to block the situation. Director. Zhou Yan tilted his head and asked, which director? Director Zhang. Nonsense, it's not Director Zhang, is it still Director Li? Besides Director Zhang, Gong Li and the others are also here. Oh yes, there's also the pianist, your happy days are coming to an end. Zhou Yan said sternly, Sister Feng, I don't understand what you're saying. If Director Zhang and the Qin player come over, then my happy days will truly come. I'm here to contribute my strength to the production team. Sister Feng chuckled and said, it's no use talking to me about troublemaking the martial arts world. I need to find a chance to talk to Director Zhang. Even if I want to sneak, I have to sneak into Director Zhang's beard, and even if I want to slap Mr. Chiu's horse. Alright, I won't tell you anymore. I have something else to do, and every time I chat with you, it takes up my time. Upon hearing Sister Feng's murmuring, Zhou Yan exclaimed that he was unjustly accused. Even though you like to chat with me, could you still blame me? End of this chapter. Who is that kid in chapter 8? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Who is that kid in chapter 8? After Sister Feng left, Zhou Yan also patted his buttocks and stood up. He didn't want to be a conspicuous figure here. At around 10 o'clock, Zhou Yan was writing a novel in his single room when there was a loud noise outside. Teacher He, Teacher Gong Li, you two live in this room, Teacher Yang, you and Teacher Ma live in the same room. Teacher He, you are in this room. Teacher He, there is a piano in this box. Be careful when taking it. Zhou Yan was listening to the outside noise with his ears turned, when suddenly the door was pushed open. Jiang Mengfei, a young man from the filming team, walked in with a box and saw Zhou Yan. He smiled and said, "You're inside, door god. I thought you went out." Then he gave way again and walked into the back with a tall and thin man about 30 years old. He looked quite sophisticated, with hair in 3 or 7 parts, neat and tidy, probably wiped with something like hair wax. Why is it said that he is particular? It's not only because he applied hair wax, but also because of his demeanor when he came in, as if he was in a stage play, twisting his neck with a fixed point. Jiang Mengfei introduced the man, Teacher He, this is the composer Zhou Yan. He came earlier, and now he is the only one living in this room. Zhou Yan, this is Teacher He, the Peking opera teacher of Teacher He. You will be roommates in the future. Teacher He nodded gentlemanly to Zhou Yan and said, "Hello, my name is He Wuming. Please give me more guidance." Zhou Yan smiled and moved a chair over. I dare not. Teacher He is tired from the journey. Please sit down and rest for a while, he said. He Wuming bent down slightly and said, "Thank you." Jiang Mengfei put down the box in his hand and said to He Wuming, "Teacher He, you can decide which bed is suitable for you. Just occupy it and I will help Zhang and his team move things." "Thank you very much, you've worked hard. Go ahead and get busy." Jiang Mengfei was also not used to He Wuming's politeness. He smiled and then raised an eyebrow with Zhou Yan, "Old Zhou, can you help Teacher He?" Zhou Yan made an okay gesture and said, "Don't worry, go ahead. Teacher He will leave it to me." After Jiang Mengfei left, Zhou Yan briefly introduced the situation of this room to He Wuming, and then recommended a bed for him. He Wuming chose one of the remaining 2 lower bunks that was a little further away from Zhou Yan. He Wuming is too polite and has a bit of a tendency to stay away from strangers. Zhou Yan chatted with him for a while and found it boring, so he ran outside to see others. As soon as he left, he saw two girls standing at the opposite door. Zhou Yan recognized them at a glance. The taller one was Gong Li and the shorter one was He Saifei. The two people below the stage are still very beautiful, and they have a bit more vitality and affinity, not much different from the beautiful sister from the neighbor's house when they were young. Gong Li was wearing a pair of white sandals with heels, a loose pair of jeans underneath, and a blue and white T-shirt on top. He Saifei needs to dress up more maturely, wearing a white T-shirt paired with a brown pleated long skirt, and a pair of black embroidered cloth shoes under her feet. Standing together with two beautiful women is indeed eye-catching, and at this moment, the entire yard's attention is focused on them both. Zhou Yan saw celebrities up close for the first time and found it quite interesting. In his previous life, he seemed to be from two different worlds with these celebrities, but in this life, he coincidentally worked with them. Zhou Yan, come and give me a hand. Zhou Yan was in a daze when he suddenly heard someone calling him. Following the sound, Lu Qin walked in with a box in his arms. Brother Lu, what's moving here? Light bulb. Oh. Zhou Yan ran over and helped Lu Qin and his team move a few boxes of light bulbs. In theory, the big red lantern hangs high, belongs to ancient costume dramas and should not use so many light bulbs. However, the lanterns made by the previous production team did not meet the requirements of photographer Zhao Fei in terms of lighting. Now they have come up with a new idea to install light bulbs inside the lanterns. When he heard this idea, Zhou Yan was a bit confused. Although he had been with the production team for a long time and increasingly felt the power of film and television dramas deceiving audiences, the lantern with light bulbs really made him exclaim amazing. Installing light bulbs inside a lantern itself is not considered impressive. The impressive feature of a movie is that it can make people not feel like it is a light bulb inside a lantern, unlike some low-quality movies and TV shows where the lantern appears to be electric. In order to achieve the effect of a lantern with the light bulb, a special material was used for the cloth outside the lantern, and something was also applied. Anyway, the entire process was very laborious. Zhang Yimou went to the car and then returned to the yard. When he saw Gong Li chatting with He Saifei, he walked over. Hello Director Zhang, He Saifei greeted Zhang Yimou with a smile. Zhang Yimou smiled and said, I haven't seen you for several days. Have you improved your Mandarin? After being praised by Zhang Yimou, He Saifei proudly said, I've been practicing the martial arts on Zhui every day lately, and I'm sure I've achieved some small results. Zhang Yimou and Gong Li were both amused by He Saifei's teasing, but He Saifei was unaware and just looked at the two smiling in confusion. Dirty guide, why are you laughing? Zhang Yimou waved his hand and said, there's nothing to laugh about. How have you been practicing Peking opera lately? I heard from teacher He that you've been quite lazy lately and don't have enough time to practice every day. After receiving a small report, He Saifei felt a bit embarrassed and said, I've been too busy these past few days and haven't had enough time to practice. Now that I'm on set, I have nothing else to do. I practice hard every day. Don't practice to the death either. If you practice to the death, I, as the director, will still be responsible. He Saifei blinked a few times, feeling that Zhang Yimou was joking, but unfortunately, Zhang Yimou spoke in a very serious tone, giving her a strong sense of disconnection. Gong Li smiled on the side and said, don't pay attention to him, that's how he talks. The three of them were chatting when Zhang Yimou suddenly saw Zhou Yan coming out of the prop room. He furrowed his brows with some confusion, and then asked Gong Li next to him, who is that young man in black? You said that one who is white and clean, thin and tall. Gong Li shook her head and said with a smile, you don't even know, let alone me. When I saw him just now, I thought he was an actor playing Chen Feipu. I thought you had a good casting. Speaking of the role of Chen Feipu, Zhang Yimou furrowed his eyebrows. He had originally set his sights on the role of Chen Feipu, which was Chu Xiao from the coal mine art troupe. The actors also agreed to come, but it was not accepted by the troupe, and it has not been decided yet. This is not the first time that an actor has been selected, but the unit does not release people. The situation before him, He Saifei, is a precedent. Previously, Zhang Yimou saw He Saifei playing the role of Meishan, and He Saifei himself agreed. However, He Saifei's Deus Hanyu opera troupe was unwilling to release people. That is to say, He Saifei has a tough temper and runs to their leader's place every day, almost smashing a warm handbag on their leader's face. At that time, Zhang Yimou also put in a lot of effort, which was like he was grinding his own side and He Saifei was soaking his own heart, so it was considered that this matter was given. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Can you play the eru? You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 9. Can you play the eru? These days, Zhang Yimou has been feeling a headache for the role of Chen Feipu. While he is looking for connections to help with the coal mine cultural and artistic troupe, he is also searching for candidate actors and making preparations. Just now Gong Li mentioned Chen Feipu, which really made Zhang Yimou's mind a little bit. The external conditions of this young man in black suit are really suitable for Chen Feipu's role. Gong Li saw Zhang Yimou in a daze and said to him, I just saw him moving boxes with Lu Qing from the scene-making team, maybe it's from the scene-making team. Lu Qing is an old person who makes scenes. He was there when Ju Do was filmed before, so Gong Li knew him. Zhang Yimou nodded. There were many young people in the filming team, and it was normal for them to have something he had never seen before. At this moment, Lu Qing finished moving the box and came out. Zhang Yimou stopped him and said, Master Lu. Lu Qing turned around and walked this way, approaching him. He smiled and asked, Director Zhang, what do you have to say? Who is the young man in black who was moving the box with you just now? He looks unfamiliar. Black clothes. Lu Qing frowned, recalling who was wearing black clothes today. He Saifei added with a smile, it's the one who's thin, tall, and looks pretty with a smile. Upon hearing this description, Lu Qing suddenly understood, you're talking about Zhou Yan. He's a music assistant, sent by teacher Zhao. He's been here for a while. Last time I went to Yanjing to pack gauze and wood, I drove him over. Oh, that's him. Zhang Yimou suddenly remembered someone like this. Okay, there's nothing else. Master Lu, please go ahead and get busy. Lu Qing didn't leave immediately. He smiled and said, Zhou Yan is quite a good kid. He is a talented student of the Central Conservatory of Music. He is not only sincere, but also lively. Zhang Yimou nodded with a smile and said, I understand. Lu Qing just smiled and left. Looking at Lu Qing's back, Zhang Yimou smiled again. He didn't know if Zhou Yan was sincere, but he must have been lively enough. Otherwise, Lu Qing had only known him for a month and wouldn't have taken the initiative to say good things to him. Regarding Zhou Yan's matter, Zhang Yimou just casually asked, and currently has no other plans. Although Zhou Yan's appearance is quite in line with the character of Chen Feipu, he is still a student and not suitable. Zhou Yan just saw Zhang Yimou standing with Gong Li and the others. The scene was chaotic today, and he couldn't go up and say hello. After working hard for the filming team outside for half a day, Zhou Yan returned to his dormitory. His new roommate, He Wuming, surprisingly changed into a gray long shirt and sat upright on the bench, holding a book while reading. Zhou Yan gave a thumbs up to himself. He Wuming is really stylish. He doesn't look like he was from 1990, but rather 1909. If we throw him until the end of the Qing dynasty and the beginning of the Republic of China, there will be no sense of discord. Upon hearing the commotion, He Wuming looked up and whispered, You're back. In an instant, a pile of goosebumps appeared on Zhou Yan's body. He suddenly remembered the scene in the TV drama where his wife greeted her husband who was coming home from work, and the tone was exactly the same as He Wuming's tone just now. Cough cough cough, teacher, he is reading a book. Zhou Yan coughed lightly to conceal his embarrassment and panic. He Wuming nodded and said, there's nothing to do on either side. Read some idle books. If it was a change of person, Zhou Yan would definitely ask questions such as, what book was read, and whether it was worth recommending, to prevent the conversation leader from falling to the ground. However, this time Zhou Yan just let out a from his nose and remained silent. He Wuming didn't take the initiative to speak, and the room suddenly quieted down. Zhou Yan returned to his desk and sat down to check what he had written halfway through. He regretted not writing more for the previous month, and now that he has an extra He Wuming, writing in the dormitory is not as comfortable. He Wuming's box was placed next to his desk, and Zhou Yan leaned over to look at it. He was quite curious about the box, as it was not a regular shape, but rather a custom-made one. Previously, someone outside said that there was a chain inside the box, but Zhou Yan couldn't tell what kind of chain was inside. The 7-string chain in this box was too short to hold properly, and the moon or hu chain was too large. Glancing at He Wuming, who was still reading, Zhou Yan didn't ask about chain's matter and instead focused on his own work. Although he has submitted 7 novels and still hasn't received a reply, Zhou Yan's mentality is still very peaceful. He also knows that in this era, submitting novels to magazines is a process of expectation and suffering coexisting. Postal delivery is too slow, and magazine editors have too much work to do. Many times, they don't even reject their manuscripts, and the ones they submit are like sinking stones into the sea. From morning until evening, neither Zhou Yan nor He Wuming spoke again. The next morning, Zhou Yan first heard a sound of tidying up his things, then heard the sound of opening and closing the door. He looked out of the window drowsily, and before it was fully dawn, he fell back and continued to sleep. Later, he was awakened by the sound of plucked string instruments, and then he heard someone singing a play called Su San Chi Jia. The voice was clear, but the taste of Peking opera was too weak and the pronunciation was not quite right. Don't worry, this must be He Feipu practicing Peking opera. The string-pulling sound just now was probably by He Wuming. Zhou Yan woke up with sleepy eyes, drank a glass of water, held a toothbrush in his mouth, and pushed the door out. He Feipu stood at the entrance of the 5th courtyard, singing Su San Uprising in a dignified manner, while He Wuming was holding a jinghu and accompanying her. Many people in the yard have already woken up, some busy with their own affairs, while others are watching He Feipu sing with great interest. Although He Feipu's performance is not very good, the life of the crew over the past month has been too mundane, which can be considered as adding some seasoning to the mundane life. Jiang Mengfei, who was squatting at the door next door, was eating when he saw Zhou Yan come out. He smiled and said, "Did the doorkeeper wake up so early today, awakened by teacher He's wonderful singing voice?" Zhou Yan gave Jiang Mengfei a blank eye and ignored him. Jiang Mengfei continued with a smile, "Teacher He, this error sounds strange. Strange and piercing." Jiang Mengfei raised his eyebrows for a moment, nodded, and said, "It feels a bit like this. Anyway, it's different from the error I heard before." Zhou Yan tugged at the corner of his mouth and said, "Because the thing in his hand is called jinghu, not eru." Jiang Mengfei patted his head and said, "Oh, I almost forgot. As the gatekeeper, you are still a talented player in the Central Conservatory of Music. Can you play the eru? Firstly, that thing is jinghu. Secondly, I am from the composition department. Can you really pull it? I can defecate." Zhou Yan shook off a sentence and then carried a basin to brush his teeth and wash his face. Jiang Mengfei, who had been eating well, suddenly hesitated in his act of picking noodles. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. A Song of Suzhou Tour. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. A Song of Suzhou Tour. Since He Feipu joined the cast, he has been singing with He Wuming for an hour every morning at the entrance of Courtyard 5, and another hour in the evening, which is impressive. At first, everyone thought it was quite interesting, and many people even went out to watch it. However, over time, everyone grew tired of listening. Although He Saifei sang better and better, everyone became less and less interested in listening. Of course, everyone knows that this is not what He Saifei wants to sing himself, but a task assigned by director Zhang that must be completed. Before coming to the set, He Saifei had been studying at home for 2 months. Sometimes in private, some people discuss why director Zhang didn't find an actress from the Beijing opera troupe and insisted on finding one from the Yu opera troupe. Make a Yueju actor struggle to learn Peking opera. Or maybe we changed the script and asked Maishan to sing Yueju. Anyway, the script had already undergone significant changes, so we didn't care about this one anymore. But they dare not say this to Zhang Yimou. Although Zhang Yimou usually looks harmless to people and animals, his temper is not usually bad when he works. The key is that Zhang Yimou has high demands, and most people can't bear it. No one wants to cause trouble for themselves. Zhou Yan has been spending less time with the filming team recently. Not only has the team become busier, but he also has things to do every day. He needs to record what Mei Shan sings every day, what instruments he Wuming uses, and what may be related to music on site. During this period of time, he felt that he had gradually achieved a wonderful fusion with this body. The things that the original owner had learned, he now used them as he pleased, just as he could immediately recognize that He Wuming was pulling the Jinghu. Zhou Yan finally knew what was inside He Wuming's box. There were a total of 3 musical instruments. In addition to the Jinghu played on the first day, there was also a moon qin and a flute. Yueqin and Jinghu he have both played without a name, except for the flute that has been kept in the box and never taken out to play. Half a month later, after practicing Peking opera with Mei Shan in the morning, He Wuming didn't leave and instead took out his flute to play a solo piece. Upon hearing the music played by He Wuming, Zhou Yan raised his eyebrows, which was quite unexpected. He Wuming is playing the representative piece of the Southern-style flute, Journey to Gusu. This piece has a light and lively rhythm, a passionate and uplifting melody, and a great contrast with He Wuming's own temperament. In Zhou Yan's view, simply sitting and playing the song, Gusu Xing, is not enough to showcase the charm of its melody, and one must stand and play it. Sitting and playing this song steadily like He Wuming is completely wrong in taste. He Wuming's Yueqin and Jinghu are absolutely top-notch, but this flute is playing average, no wonder he never takes it out to play. At the end of the song, many people applauded, and Jiang Mengfei cheered, "Teacher he, another song." He Wuming did not respond to Jiang Mengfei's request for another song, but gracefully bowed to everyone to thank them, and then walked towards the dormitory holding a chair. Just as He Wuming was passing by Zhou Yan, He Wuming suddenly spoke up, "Zhou Yan, I heard you often analyze the pieces I play with everyone. How do you feel about this piece today?" Upon hearing these words, Zhou Yan wished he could slap himself twice. Because Zhou Yan is the only one on the set who understands music besides He Wuming, many people have asked him before what He Wuming plays and how he performs. Zhou Yan also absorbed the memory of the original owner very well, and suddenly gained a lot of knowledge and skills. Unable to resist showing off to others, he analyzed the music played by He Wuming, the instruments used, and the origins and allusions of the instruments and songs from beginning to end. Although everything he said was good, Zhou Yan didn't know how others spread it, let alone how He Wuming, a strange person, would think. Anyway, it seems that He Wuming has taken this matter to heart. Seeing He Wuming staring at him, Zhou Yan chuckled and said, "Teacher, he plays this song, Journey to Suzhou, very well. Although we are in western Shaanxi, the scene where teacher he just sat at the door reminded me of the scene of talented scholars reciting poetry and composing poems in Jiangnan, which is particularly relevant to this song." There was no sign of any emotional change on He Wuming's face. He nodded and then put down the bench, but still held the flute in his hand. "Can you play the flute, Zhou Yan?" He Wuming suddenly asked. Zhou Yan nodded and said, "I do know a bit." "Do you know, Journey to Suzhou?" "Blow over." He Wuming let out a sigh and didn't say anything more. Zhou Yan had long been accustomed to He Wuming's strange behavior, shrugged his shoulders and returned to his desk to sit down, starting to record the content of He Wuming and their singing today. Although He Wuming is a strange person, he has an advantage that he won't compete with Zhou Yan for a table. Previously, Zhou Yan also offered to use a desk for He Wuming, but He Wuming refused. In the evening of that day, He Feipu and He Wuming sang at the entrance of the courtyard as usual for an hour. After finishing, Zhang Yimou jumped out of nowhere. Zhang Yimou walked straight towards Zhou Yan, holding a flute in his hand. Seeing Zhang Yimou heading in his direction, Zhou Yan looked at both sides of himself. There was no one else. He opened his mouth and was about to say hello to Zhang Yimou, but Zhang Yimou took the lead and said, "Zhou Yan, let's play a flute for everyone to listen to." "Ah! Don't you know how to play?" Zhang Yimou handed the flute to Zhou Yan. "The new flute that just arrived today, I don't know if you're used to it." Zhou Yan looked at Zhang Yimou in surprise, not knowing what medicine the great director was selling in his gourd. As for how Zhang Yimou knew he could play the flute, there was no need to ask. It must be He Wuming who said it, because he had never told anyone about it. But why did He Wuming tell Zhang Yimou about this? At this moment, it's not the time for him to ask questions. Many people in the yard are looking over here, and Zhang Yimou's hand is still reaching out. The big brothers and sisters in the filming team looked eagerly at this side, with an encouraging look on their faces. Biting his teeth, Zhou Yan took the flute and said, "Then I'll make a fool of myself." Zhang Yimou smiled and said, "Hey, don't feel pressured, anyway, nobody can understand." Zhou Yan did not go to the entrance of the courtyard like He Wuming and the others did. He stood still and placed the flute horizontally on his lips. First, he briefly tried a few notes. He was not only trying the flute, but also trying himself. Although he felt like he could play it, he had not really started playing it yet, fearing that there might be any unexpected situations. However, there were no unexpected incidents this time. After trying out a few notes, Zhou Yan felt a familiar sensation surge up. He didn't need to think too much, and his fingers and mouth started moving on their own, completely based on muscle memory. Perhaps it was a subconscious reaction. He was also playing The Journey to Suzhou. End of this chapter.